Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Carry Yourself with Confidence. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit that is building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So, as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So, definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to all of them. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, BMO, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch just a couple polls to step back, see how everyone is doing today. This first one is going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? And I'll give this one just a few moments for people to submit a response here. Thank you, thank you. All right, gonna go ahead and end this poll and share these results. Awesome. Looks like optimism is in the lead. We always love to see that, but definitely have some feelings of surviving and anxiety in the audience. I'm very hopeful some of our conversation might help with some of those feelings. So I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch that second poll. All right. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? And this one tells us a little bit more about your current needs as an entrepreneur so that we can continue to provide meaningful programming to all of you. Awesome. We got folks from South Carolina, California, Missouri, Canada, Seattle, Washington, Texas, Calgary, New Jersey, Ohio, Georgia. Awesome. Welcome, welcome, everyone. So great to have you all here with us today. All right, I'm going to end this poll, share these results. All right. Looks like a tie between finance and surviving, with sales coming up close behind, but we got needs all across the board. So thank you for participating, and we will take this into account for future programming and resources. I am going to stop sharing this poll. And without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our special guest, Kelly Lynn Adams, Master Certified Trauma-Informed Business Leadership and Life Coach. Kelly, it is such a pleasure to have you here with us today. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Michelle, I am super excited as well. And hello, everyone in the chat. We have a full house here. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Well, before we jump in, do you want to just maybe give like a 30 seconds on who you are?
Sure. Yeah. So I am Kelly Lynn Adams, Master Certified Coach, speaker, international writer, podcaster. Started on Wall Street and then climbed the corporate ladder for 20 plus years and then became an entrepreneur. So that's about it.
Awesome. Well, there's going to be a lot of relevant stories, I'm sure, that you're going to draw from your experience, and I'm super excited to hear. So let's jump right in. We're talking about confidence today. And I think to start off, just understanding presence a little bit more as kind of a foundation for that confidence can be really important. So how do you define presence, and in what ways does it contribute to establishing influence and what that means, and kind of how entrepreneurs can go beyond charisma to create a greater impact with their presence.
Yeah, it's such a great question. So I define like influence and impact and confidence. It's your poise, it's your authenticity, and it's your authority. So, and we were just talking before this, right? At every level, there's a different level of confidence. Like right now, I'm wobbly in certain areas of my life and my business, but I'm not in the same when I started out, right? So it's, for me, it's being more of who you already are. And it makes such a difference and impact because we get so many external things like society, social media, all the external things that can really have an impact on our confidence if we allow it. So to me, confidence and influence and impact, and it all ties in together. And it's so important for us to have, because I don't know if anyone has ever worked with horses, but horses can actually sense your energy and your confidence, right? It's not kind of what you're doing with your hands or what you're saying. It's literally who you are being.
Yep. Yeah. I actually have had that experience with horses, and it's really, really amazing to see. And it does translate, with your interactions with people as well. People can read your energy, and that's really important with these business interactions that you're doing so regularly as a founder. And so, but I think it can be a little bit difficult to kind of really visualize like the ways that confidence can impact your success as a business leader, and as a business itself. And so to kind of dive a little bit deeper, why confidence is so critical to entrepreneurial success, and kind of in what ways consistent stakeholder and customer engagement can contribute to that confidence and the process of building it, and eventually embodying it, and kind of what are the key aspects of these interactions with stakeholders or customers that kind of really contribute to confidence?
Yeah, so I would say for me, in my experience, and for me, let's kind of dial it back, because when I was growing up, I had a speech impediment. I was very shy. And it's so interesting that now it's like, oh, I'm speaking, I'm out there. And so for me, even throughout my lifetime, and this helps too, even within my business now and the clients that I serve, it's okay, how can I be of service? But also, how can I walk my walk and talk my talk? And for me, what allows me to do that is having and keeping the commitments that I make for myself. Like starting off very, very small. And people are like, well, how does that impact like stakeholders and clients? It does, because if you say, for example, you're going to work out tomorrow and you don't, and you break that promise with yourself, it is like you are cracking a little bit of your confidence. And I like to say, putting the coins in the confidence bank. So it really starts with self, because we are our own best asset. And if we break promises to ourselves, then we become this like little wobbly, like, oh, can I really make that promise and keep it to other people? Now, some people will say, oh, well, I'm great at keeping commitments and promises to stakeholders and outside people, but not to myself. But it really goes hand in hand. So for me, it's really important to keep the commitments that you make to yourself, and you can start out small. Like it doesn't have to be a 20 to-do list. Really it is the habit of keeping the commitments to yourself. And then the second piece of that is really doing something uncomfortable, like every single day, to push yourself, right? Or pull yourself outside of your comfort zone. So that could be, running. Some people are like, oh, I don't run, right? Or now the whole thing and the whole trend is like cold plunges. I'm not saying you have to go into a cold plunge with an ice bath, right? But what's on the edge of your comfortability factor? In coaching, we call this the edging process, to really get outside of your comfort zone, to edge yourself out just a little bit more than you did yesterday. And it makes a difference, because have you ever did something where you're really, really nervous, or for some people, it's public speaking, right? Like, oh, I don't want to give a presentation in front of so-and-so. And then you do it and you're like, oh, that was like, now I can do it again.
Yeah.
So it seems so simple, but it's actually like a mind body, remembrance and stepping into. And why I say remembrance is because we were all 2 years old at one point, and we didn't have any of the like internal conversations, the external really influences. When we were 2 years old or 1 year old, whenever we started to walk, I don't know when I started to walk, we got up, we fell down, we got up, we fell down again. But like none of the times when we fell down and try to get back up again were we like, oh, my confidence is shaken. We just did it. We just kept on doing it. So I always like to say that to my clients, because it's like some people just stop when it's like, oh, I messed up, or I failed, or I didn't do, or I'm not going to even put myself out there. And it's like, no, we actually that's how success is built, like through the actions of doing it messy sometimes.
Totally. And I'm hearing two things kind of with this idea, with these two ideas of kind of like proving to yourself that you can do things that maybe you once didn't think were possible for you or for your business. And each time you kind of, achieve one of those goals, it's like, wait, I can do this. And that's really, really, really meaningful in kind of when those new opportunities come, not counting yourself out beforehand and being like, well, hold on, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can figure out a way to do this and make it work. So I just love that. And I think it really plays into, just building trust and credibility, and how important that is, because when you prove to yourself that you can do these things and that you can hold these commitments to yourself, that shows other people, that you can do the same for them. And I'm wondering, how entrepreneurs can kind of balance the fine line between projecting confidence and not coming off as overconfident when they're kind of translating that experience from fulfilling their personal goals to then kind of fulfilling the needs of, those stakeholders or customers that they're serving through their business.
Yeah, so you might not like the first part of the answer, but I'm like, be as confident as you can, right? Because sometimes we think we're overly confident and we're not. Like it just comes off as confident. There's a movie called I Am Pretty with Amy Schumer. And she literally, transforms into this like massive confident being. And everyone's like doubting her and laughing at her at first. And then they're like, wow, like we need to take some tips from her. And so when we're confident, sometimes we get to look at, okay, who is the future version of myself? How would that person look? How would they act? How would they feel? How would they respond? Now, we're not robots, right? We're not AI. I mean, we're playing with AI now, but we're not robots. So yes, are we going to not always be, and act from our future self? Yes. And can we, right, do the best and embody that future self version? Now, when some people are like, oh, that's a little too confident. If you feel like you're like, just like, bursting at the seams, what I like to say with other people is when you're dealing with other people, clients, stakeholders, customers, is all the questions of how can I serve, right? And there's 4 things that all people want. They want to feel seen, they want to feel heard, they want to feel understood and appreciated. Yeah. So if you can take a step back and say, okay, in this moment, right, it's how can I make this person feel seen, heard, understood, acknowledged, right, appreciated. I kind of messed that up a little bit, but it's really, and there's a quote by Maya Angelou saying, people are not going to remember like what you did or what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. So when we're talking about this confidence game, it's really deeply understanding the other person, because some of the best coaching sessions that I have, or even when I'm looking for potential business or opportunities, the more I allow the other person to speak, it's like, that was the best conversation I ever had. I had literally had people say, that's the best. I'm like, I didn't say anything, right? I only asked you questions. So really like that makes the other person feel confident, right? So sometimes, yes, it's like a 2-pronged approach. It's being, okay, a good listener and making the other people feel a certain way, but then also for yourself, okay, how can I embody my future version of yourself? And the way I like to do that is through exercises. Like, imagine yourself, your future self. Like, again, like that whole, like, you are with everything you ever wanted, wished, everything came true. How would that person act? And even to the slightest details of like, what would they eat? What would their movement be? Like all those little things. So that's how I approach this, because I always think, okay, is this in service of the other person on the other end of the line or in the computer or in front of me?
Yeah. No, and I think this is really important, and it kind of plays into something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs worry about when they're kind of, trying to build those empathetic connections with those that, stakeholders, clients, whoever it may be. But kind of how to worrying that confidence in those engagements might come at the cost of authenticity, as you're kind of working to foster those connections through empathy. So what strategies can entrepreneurs kind of implement to ensure that their engagement with ideal customers and stakeholders remains authentic, and that they're, while their messaging still resonates, and embodies that confidence?
Yeah, so I would say whenever your back's against the wall, or you don't know what the next move to take is in anything, in your messaging, in your speaking, it's like, get curious, ask a question. That could be on stage, right? And you're like, oh, I forget what I'm going to say. Like, how's everyone doing? Raise their hand. What are you feeling, right? Like in the comments right now, how's everyone feeling, right? If I didn't know what to say. Right. So it's like, oh, you're actually taking the power and putting it back on to like be more like engaging. Same thing with online. It's like, okay, getting curious. You could do this with social media, right? Looking at the data, the insights on your social media, what posts are doing well, what emails are getting opened more, right? So really getting curious of what is actually happening in your world and playing. Like if you don't have the data, it's like, let's get creative and just push some data or experiment with stuff, because really at the end of the day, it's the game of life, right? It's experimenting. We get to play, we get to test, tweak, polish. And that's how refinement and mastery becomes, right? So, and that's also how confidence is built, because it's like, oh, if I know that works, I'm going to make it even better, and then it's like, oh, then that's when you see like the great athletes, the great CEOs and entrepreneurs, their mastery at their crafts, because it took years and years to do it. It's like, and a lot of entrepreneurs that I meet, and even myself, I have done this throughout my journey. I still kind of do this and I catch myself, is comparison of, okay, I'm on chapter 3, but I'm comparing my chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 11. All right. Who has done that before? It's like, oh, okay. Well, sometimes you don't see the behind the scenes, right, of someone else's journey. And it's like, oh, well, here they're doing all of X, Y, and Z. But it's like, yeah, but they started, like, do you really know the behind the scenes of what that person went through? So I think also a lot of entrepreneurs get caught up in their head and do that comparison of, wow, I want to be here, and why did they get there so fast? And it's like, it didn't really happen that fast. Or if it did, they had a help team, support system, all the things, or connections, right? So we really just have to be mindful and stay curious in that process, because that's where I also see a lot of people hold themselves back. For years, I was doing that. Before I became a full-time entrepreneur, I would go to all these networking events, and all my friends were like full-time entrepreneurs. And I would be like, what is wrong with me? Right. And I'd always be like victim mentality, like, is it my confidence? Am I doing something wrong? I'm not making enough money. Why didn't I take the leap yet? And it was like all of this stuff. And I was side hustling for years. And so when I really was like, Kelly, stay in your lane, and really had the refinement and really got out of my head in that and stopped comparing myself to everyone else's journey, that's when things really started to take off for me.
I love that. I love that. And it can be so challenging, for, just not even just entrepreneurs, but humans to, avoid the comparison game. But I think that's just so important, like when you're thinking about these relationships and the goals that you want to achieve for yourself and for your business long term. So I love that. And so kind of, you know, for the most part, I think that the process of building confidence for entrepreneurs will likely not be like a linear pathway. And, challenges professionally and personally will inevitably arise, whatever that looks like for you. And so, what can entrepreneurs do to maintain a consistent sense of confidence through those challenging times?
Yeah, great question. And so, first, I want to say you are not alone. So sometimes when things occur externally, it feels like we're alone. Like, is anyone else experiencing this? Like, am I solo here on this island? Like, we don't. And so that's why support, getting a coach, a mentor, being in programs, that are supporting you in groups is so, so critical. I'll share something that for me personally that just went on. My grandma just recently passed away. And, that shook my confidence a little bit, right? So life is going to continue to life, right? And you're allowed, right, to experience the life, right? But then also be like, okay, am I going to allow the external circumstances? And I'm not saying suppress and not feel and not grieve and heal and all of those things. Yes, you can do that, and it's an end conversation, right? And so my grandma was really important to me, and the past couple of weeks have been kind of wobbly for me, being like, oh, I'm like off my game a little bit, and it's like, well, really, no, I'm not, right? And it's giving yourself time and space for the things that are occurring externally and things you cannot control, and you can control certain things, right? So it's like, okay, what can I control? Am I really allowing external circumstances to dictate my inner state, or vice versa? So life is always going to be lifing, and it's how do you really go with the flow, but then also have, okay, external circumstances aren't going to totally, shake me, and maybe they will, but it's like, okay, how can I get back on course? So I just want everyone to know, like, you are not alone. Everyone has lifing. Everyone has certain things they're experiencing and going through. If not now, you will. And just to remember, support is critical. Mentorship, coaching, whatever way you can get it. And also being a North Star, and remembering, like when I said up at the hour, it's like confidence is being more of who you are, right? And like within this process, for me, it's actually like an unbecoming and an unraveling of being like, wow, I'm going to take off some more masks that I've been hiding behind, and really like create and cultivate in my power. So I think people is like, everyone has that. Everyone has the power within. For example, if I were to ask you right now, think of a time where you were really scared, or you were really angry, or you were really happy, right? You can call on those states at any moment. And why can you call on those states? Is because you, right, can create and cultivate that power within and change your state. So the same is with, and this is like with confidence, you can create and cultivate at any moment, right? Change your state in whatever you need to do or want to do. So it's a beautiful thing as human beings we can do, and we have the power. So it's really just getting out of our own way, but also like a fine line of dancing with, we don't want to suppress what's going on, because that's what I did for years too. I suppressed, I didn't feel, I developed chronic illness. And so I wasn't like feeling my emotions and being with life. I was just like dodging through it. And what I learned like over like with my healing and doing trauma work and coaching and mentorship and all of that, it's like, no, you can actually be with both. Like life is both. So I would just say you're not alone, get support. And also you can create and cultivate like at any moment, what feeling and what state that you do want to change, and give yourself grace and space also within those moments.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is so valuable. And it just makes me think of what we were talking about earlier of kind of like, you know, when you have set these small goals for yourself and you achieve them, you have those moments to look back on in those challenging times and kind of be like, hold on, I've gotten through tough times before. I've achieved goals through tough times before. Who's to say I can't do it again? Who's to say I can't keep doing it? And I also think, timing can be a funny thing. And sometimes when we, in emerging from these challenging times, we have new opportunities to consider. And so looking a little bit deeper into kind of how confidence interplays in kind of navigating new opportunities, I think the ability to take risks and pivot and foster innovation can be really, really important in the discovery of new markets. So how can entrepreneurs kind of embody those qualities as they're navigating new opportunities?
Yeah. So when we're talking about new opportunities, right, sometimes there's uncertainty, sometimes there's unknown, sometimes there's also the narrative and the stories that are coming in, right? Like we see different things on social media, and sometimes we allow to buy into those narratives, and we don't want to, right? As entrepreneurs, and we can create anything. Really, as human beings, we can create anything. So for that, and you hit on it, and you led this, because I was like, oh, I want to say that too, is really to remember of what you have done and what you have created. So a lot of times with my clients, I'll have them create a brag and boast list, or an accomplishment or achievement list. And I'll say, okay, at least do 100 things. Even if you have to go back as far as 5 years old, if you can remember, list down different things that you've accomplished, you achieved, you were proud of yourself, because what that does, it actually signifies to your brain and your body that, oh, like, yeah, I did that. Like, it reminds, because the brain is going to delete very quickly. We forget very easily sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes we go to the negative because the brain and body, it's the main thing is to keep us safe. And to keep us safe, we have to make sure that everything is okay, right? And if that affects our confidence, like maybe we're not going to think positively because we got to feel safe, and maybe that's going to chip away our confidence. So it's like the confidence and the remembrance of, like, wait, like, I landed that client, or I got that job, or I landed that interview when I was in corporate, or yeah, I did make money. Or even if you're not making money yet, it's like, I was up to this point, like, I got myself here. How did I make money here? How did I support myself here? Right. Or asking for help. So it's identifying where can you brag and boast about yourself, and leaving that list somewhere on your phone, somewhere where you see it every single day. So you can remind yourself who the heck you are. Because it's like, we easily forget. And it's like, wait a minute, I can, my brag and boast list, I did this, and this. So if I created and cultivated that, I can do this. It's just another thing. Maybe it's at a different level. Maybe it's at a different degree, but I can do it.
I love that. So I want to switch gears a little bit and kind of zero in on, the way that confidence can really interplay with business, different functions of the business. So kind of thinking about marketing and messaging. How can entrepreneurs kind of develop a strategic plan in those areas that embodies the same confidence that they're carrying into these daily interactions that we're talking about? And, just some of the key elements that entrepreneurs should consider in this process to ensure success.
Yeah. So marketing and messaging. So, I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole with all of this. What I see most with entrepreneurs is sometimes they're afraid to ask or put themselves out there, right? Or sell every day. It's like, well, everyone's selling every day. If you look at TV or the internet, you're being sold every single day. Yeah. So why are you not selling every single day yourself or your product or your service, right? So it's like, yeah, why am I not selling? I wasn't selling every day for years. I was like, what am I doing? I was the consumer instead of the creator, right? So it's looking at, okay, where am I consuming? And it's okay to consume. It's like, however, your creation mode should be, and higher than your consumption mode. So it's where are you creating? And so with the marketing and even the messaging, it's like, are you putting yourself out there every day? Are you selling yourself in whatever capacity that is every single day? And also with the messaging, a lot of times, I love the branding conversation. I love, put yourself out there the way you want the world to see, because really you create your own narrative. You get to really create, because it's all made up anyway, right? So it's like, who do you want to be? What do you want? What story and narrative do you want to shine a light and attention on? And sometimes what's really powerful, again, with the authenticity and authority aspect, is showing people behind the scenes, like getting vulnerable, getting a little messy, because people are all going through their own messes. And I'm not saying make that the core message of your brand.
Sure.
But when people are struggling or going through something, or even documentation doesn't have to be a struggling, or it could be like, oh, I'm documenting the process so I can show how it was, or how we're doing it. Now, in all cases, that can't be done, but it's like giving a little behind the scenes, right? Showing them a little bit of like, oh, like behind the scenes. I know there was a period of time where I didn't let anyone in. Like everyone's like, oh, you have, siblings, you have, right? It was like, oh yeah, I do. Right. So it's like letting some people in. It depends on the business. Right. But the marketing and messaging, I mean, think about some of the marketing and messaging that you resonate with. Like, what are those components? And you could even do the exercise of what brands do I really, really like? And what are the values that they base, their marketing and messaging on, and could I take that within my brand and make it my own, right? But people are buying you. They're buying the product and service, but they're buying you. They're buying the values. They're buying what the product or service stands for. So you really want to get that across. And you also want to create like an imagine if, right? You want to paint the picture for people to be like, oh, come over here and experience my product or service, right? So when we're doing that, sometimes, yes, it's being confident, and it's being as confident as, because people, again, are going to buy you. So if you don't believe in you or your product or service, it's going to be felt, even within the words, within the marketing, within the messaging. So it always starts with you. So however you can, and again, if you want to read your brag and boast list every day, do it, whatever is going to, or start a new workout routine, or commit one thing a day, right? Getting uncomfortable. That's the way it's going to shine through, right? Just kind of like the horse, like people can sense it. So that's what I would say with marketing. There's so many tools and strategies and techniques. And I would say, test, tweak, and polish. Experiment with what feels good to you, because sometimes we don't have the confidence, and then we get to try on, and we have these cookie cutter marketing approaches that may not work. And people are like, well, it worked for this person. Why is it not working for me? Because maybe you are not in the equation. So I always go back to self and say, okay, where is my unique edge? Where is my unique perspective? And how can I bring that in the marketing and messaging in the product and service?
Mm-hmm. I think you brought up something really critical here, which is, just uncovering shared values with stakeholders, with customers, and bringing that into your confident leadership, and your marketing and your messaging that embodies that confidence. And so thinking kind of long term about like stakeholder and customer relationships in this regard, especially where, trust and credibility is crucial. What strategies have you found to be effective in cultivating those stronger connections, and how might entrepreneurs kind of navigate the challenges that will arise in these relationships long term to ensure mutual success?
Yes, so over delivering, like going above and beyond. And that doesn't mean like, oh, give your whole self and all your time. No, it could be the smallest thing, like reaching out, right? Doing the unexpected, right? Or being there and really like listening. Sometimes people just want to be listened to. Like, how many times are people just not listened to, right? So it's the small things that we don't realize make a huge impact when we're cultivating, creating relationships. And it's also like, okay, the listening and the over giving, but it's also like checking in, like being real. Like, what's working for you, like what's not, right? And just being open. And that's sometimes that's a vulnerable place because like sometimes we don't want to hear it. And it's like, oh, if I ask, then I really got to prepare to, take in the feedback or the surveys or right. So it's whatever it is, it's the surveys or getting direct feedback. So being open, because it's also like the more information that you get, the better that you can, right, shift and see where you want to change. So I would say those two things is definitely doing like going above and beyond. And again, doesn't have to be this whole process. It could be literally just simply listening and asking, for feedback and always asking like, how can I be doing this better, or taking surveys or getting inside of the stakeholder or the client's mind of like, what is going well? What is not going well? Like, what do you think is working? So those is what I found, because sometimes we don't know. And sometimes it's like, oh, what's really going well here? So it's also getting feedback in both directions. And that will sometimes feel like, well, that will shake my confidence if I don't like the survey results or what I hear. But it's like, not really, right? Because it's the same thing with an athlete, right? Take any athlete that they watch game film. Okay, they're watching, okay, I should have moved here. I could, increase my time here, move here. So it's looking at it and from the perspective of, okay, this is actually going to make me better and more mastery at what I am doing. So just think of it as like game film. Like, how can you run the game film on yourself, like with any aspect of your business or even any aspect of your life? Because that's ultimately going to, come outward as well to stakeholders and clients.
Mm-hmm. And this kind of goes back to a concept you were talking about earlier of, getting curious and really engaging them to tell you about what they need and about what they think. So I think, as we were talking about earlier, that totally is going to play into, the value and the mutual benefits from those long-term relationships. So I love that. And of course, I think something that entrepreneurs inevitably worry about is as they're looking for the best ways to communicate is just navigating biases, and what role confidence kind of plays in kind of managing these communications in a way that is neutral and kind of.
Yeah, I think that, and it goes back to when we talk about biases and all that, sometimes the silence, right, and the curiosity is the best place to be. Because when we are curious and open to learning, then it's like, oh, that's like a really powerful place to be. And so if you think about it, right, sometimes the quietest person in the room has the most to say, right? And you're like, oh, like what? Why is that person being so quiet? Have you been in like a meeting or like a networking event? Like that person's really quiet. And then everyone else like, is done talking and then that person talks and you're like, wow, right? Yeah. And there's also something in the coaching industry too is everyone hasn't entered the room like in a meeting unless everyone has spoken. Now, that can't always happen, right? But why is that, right? Because you're giving each person, again, the way to feel seen, heard, understood, acknowledged. And then when someone hasn't talked, you're like, hi, I wonder what's up with that person. And sometimes that person has like the most powerful thing to say. So the silence and the curiosity is sometimes the most confident way that you can go about, and even just observing, right, people's body language, because confidence also comes from, yes, it's the actions. And we said it's the energy, like with the horses. And it's also in the observing, right? It's in the body language. It's in the way you hold yourself, your presence, right? Your authority. When people cross their arms or cross their legs, like there's definitely something with confidence and body language as well. The way you look at people, like in their eyes. And then in different countries, I know there's different certain signs that, are not acceptable. I don't know all those signs, but, and there might be another sign that's not accepted in another country, but looking up body language and saying, okay, how can my body language even be more confident, or the way that I carry myself? And maybe it's not just in what I say, but it's like who I am actually, being and embodying.
Love that. Awesome. Well, we've talked about so many really, really valuable strategies here and key ideas to building confidence, and just to kind of I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs in our community, it's going to be important to kind of really understand the impact of that confidence over time. So how would you recommend entrepreneurs measure the success and impact of the confidence that they embody when it comes to communication and leadership strategies?
Yeah, there's all different ways you can measure it. So I would say, do what works for you. When your confidence is up and when your confidence is down, right? And being okay with, okay, it may be a little bit of a roller coaster, a little bit of a wobble. However, it's like if you are honing in on a certain area or aspect of your business or your life, like really focus in and embody, like, who am I being in that moment? And it's like, and the question gets to be, okay, can I get 1% better, each day? And okay, that was yesterday. How can I get right? So that's a really good measurement, because we don't want to put so much pressure on ourselves and then be like, oh, well, I didn't measure up, because again, then that's like judging ourselves and putting ourselves down. And like, that doesn't, like, when you're trying to increase your confidence, right? Because the thing is, the whole thing of this is innately, you were born confident. You were born worthy. And then as we grow up, there's different things outside of ourselves, or, the circumstances, the bullying, the external experiences, what good, bad, and different, doesn't matter. They have occurred for us for our highest good. But it's like, oh, and then it kind of chips away sometimes, right? The confidence is just like, nope, we get to build it. We get to remember and unlearn, and not build it back up, but really like remember, like, oh yeah, I was that 2-year-old that like didn't care. Like I was just like playing in the dirt, and I really didn't care what other people think of me, right? So so with the measuring, I would say pick something that feels good to you. And even if it's like, you know what, okay, I'm going to get 1% or 2% better than I was yesterday, how does that look for me? So I think it's very personal for people, and just finding the way that works for them.
Right. I love that. Awesome. Will, this has been such an awesome conversation, and we do have questions coming in live. So if you are in the audience and you have a question for Kelly, please make sure to submit it below. We will try to get to as many as possible. So I feel like you've touched on this concept a little bit, but this person is kind of, wondering how, I think, individuals' different perspectives on confidence can kind of play into the interactions that you have. Maybe your definition of confidence or how you embody confidence looks different from another person, and just kind of the best way to navigate that.
Yeah, I think it's staying curious, because everyone has their own definition of confidence. And, you could look it up in the dictionary and get that. But some people might be like, no, because everyone's view and lens of the world is different. So if you think about us putting on sunglasses or eyeglasses, everyone has a different lens based on where they grew up, right? Based on their experiences, based on their past, based on what has occurred. So nothing's good, bad, wrong, or right. Everyone's perspective is valid, right? Because of the glasses and the lens that they're looking out from. So I would say stay curious. You might not always agree, and that's okay. And really the most important thing is for you, like what is internally going to help you, so that you can be a ripple effect in the world, and right, create and cultivate from that place, from your definition of success. And it's okay, right, if there's different definitions or versions of the way success and confidence like is, per se.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's a really great way to look at it. And so I think we didn't really touch on this quite, but I think it kind of plays into what we were talking about a little bit earlier of how to maintain confidence during challenging times. But something that gets brought up a lot between in the entrepreneurial community is, just the fear of rejection, and kind of, and even in those moments where there's a missed opportunity or a perceived rejection, kind of how to bounce back or avoid spiraling and really stick to that confidence that you were carrying with you entering into that potential opportunity.
Yeah. So I love a mantra that it helps me. I don't know if it's going to serve anyone else. Is what is meant for you will not miss you. So what is meant for you will not miss you. That doesn't mean you sit on a pillow and meditate and don't do the action. But what is meant for you is not going to miss you. And you're always going to be rejected, right? So the most important thing is not to reject yourself, right? So there's always going to be rejection, and rejection is just redirection, right? We've heard it. Redirection into something that is far more and way better than you could ever have imagined. I'll get a little personal. My dating life, I was supposed to marry this one man, and I was like, oh, and then the rejection happened and it didn't happen. And I made it personal. Like, oh, it's about me. But I'm so glad that it didn't work out, because there was so much more better that came after him. Now, he was an amazing individual, but it was like someone could say, oh, I was being rejected, but it's like, no, it's redirection, because it may not happen because there's a better opportunity. It may not be in alignment. You may have dodged a bullet. Like we could go on and on about rejection.
Totally.
Yeah. And just always think, and it may not feel like it. It may be like, no, that was the opportunity. And guess what? Yes, it could be. And it could be a timing thing, right? It could be the opportunity is going to even be way better and be presented to you at another round when something else is occurring. So always stay open that yes, you will get rejected, but it's for your highest good, even if you don't understand it. And it's always redirecting you to something that is meant for you. So that's how and trust me, it's the rejection is always like at every level, it gets, it occurs. And even with the confidence, every level. I was telling you offline, I used to work for a major brand CEO, and they had just got into the CEO position, and they said, I don't know if I can do that. Like, I don't know if I can do this. You're like, you just got the CEO role. What are you talking about? Right? Like, that is not right. So confidence, rears in any kind of, it affects everybody.
Totally. Yeah. No, I love that. And something else that I think is kind of like a potentially common sentiment among the entrepreneurial community is kind of like, okay, especially if you're a solopreneur, you're wearing multiple hats. There is just so much to do on a daily basis. It can get overwhelming. It's like you don't necessarily know how best to prioritize what needs to get done, and then things don't get done at the pace that you would really like. So any tips for kind of just navigating that with confidence?
Hire before you're ready. I know people are like, I don't know. Hire before you're ready. And even if you don't have the funds, there's internships, there's people that can help out, right? Because that is also like one of the mistakes I made in the beginning was like, I was doing everything by myself and for myself. And yes, sometimes you've got to bootstrap and all the things, but there are people willing to help. There are people building, wanting to build portfolios or wanting to just be around you or help you out, right? So it's hiring before you're ready and getting help before you're ready, because yes, you can do certain things like by yourself and for yourself to a certain level. Yeah. However, we can't do this on our own. Like every major, successful entrepreneur and executive and stakeholder, like it's a team, right? We're not in this boat. We're not like driving the boat by ourselves. I mean, you can, but it's just very difficult, right? So even if it's like, one person or two test, tweak, and polish with that. So I know sometimes it's a little bit hard to also like let go of control or trust, or you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know how do I direct you? but it's just like doing it messy, right? Like it's the same thing of like, getting on the court, right, basketball court, and just like throwing the shots, right, and just like, or walking the runway when you don't know how to like actually do the walk properly. So
Right.
it's just getting messy and being okay with that, right? Different stages.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Um, we have an entrepreneur here kind of uh, thinking about, any particular scenario, whether it's with a stakeholder or a customer where maybe you're faced, you've been asked an unexpected question that you're not really prepared for, or you're kind of faced with something that you have to address like immediately in front of, a stakeholder, and kind of when you're taken off guard, how do you maintain confidence in those moments?
Yeah. So this is a great coaching question, right? When you don't know where to go and you're caught off guard, it's like, again, with the curiosity, like, oh, tell me more about that.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit more. Or asking, I like to call it like the 7-layer dip question, is like asking, and you don't think it's a seven questions, but keep asking questions until you get the understanding. Because when you allow people to talk, you're going to see where their mind is. You're going to see their thought process. You're going to see, oh, what are they really asking? Or what are they trying to ask? Or what are they, like, so it's like getting people, and people love to talk like about themselves, about like, they love to hear themselves talk, some people. So it's really staying curious, right? Saying, tell me more about that. Or, what do you mean? I'm just curious about that. And just being like, oh, what is that? What does that mean? Like, what would you want? Like having them explain more as many times until you get your grip, right? Or until you can feel, okay, a little bit, I got some edge here, and I can, go in. And sometimes, listen, I've been in certain situations where I'm like, I actually don't know the answer. Let me get back to you. And
Yeah.
even when I've done the curiosity, like sometimes I just don't. And that's okay. And people do respect that, because it's like, you're also not BSing them, right? So if you really get to that point where you're curious, you stay curious, you ask your questions, and you're still stumped, it's okay to be like, I don't know that. Can I get back to you on that? And some people will really respect being like, okay, she's not going to BS her way.
Right.
So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's super, super helpful. Thank you. Um, and I think this is a really awesome question that we've got in. How can I help someone else on their journey to becoming more confident?
Mm, become it first, embody it, right? And but like, because people will see it,
Yeah.
right? Like people will see it within you, and then you can mentor, right? That's embodied mentorship, right?
Mm.
When you are actually walking your walk and talking your talk. Now, you're not, everyone's perfect, whole, and complete, but sometimes we're not, like in certain situations, perfect. We mess up, but really the best way, because think of a child and a parent, right? A parent can teach something to the child, and you can teach, right, in the way of speaking and mentorship. Yes, 100%. That's definitely it. And the child also watches the parent. The child also, studies the parent, right? It's kind of like, oh, do what I say, not what I do. Yes, and right. So I think it's a combination of being a mentor, teaching, helping someone what was your experience and what you know and what you was helped you in your confidence journey and evolution. And it's also being the thing, right? Like embodying the action. So, the parent role modeling or embodied action, because they'll see it. I like clients all the time. They watch my app, my moves, they read my newsletter, like that, it's like, okay, are you in being what you're teaching? So
Mhm.
I think the best, and we're all works in progress, but people will sense like you are on a journey, and you are being confident. And I don't know if anyone has watched someone kind of grow, and you're like, oh wow, look at that person, they changed, or something's different about that person, and that's the embodiment of it. So I think that's the most powerful way, but plus with the mentorship too.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. So last question here, I think we have time for. Someone's kind of curious about like what is the role of likability when it comes to embodying confidence, and just making, kind of going back to this concept of, is there a way to be too overconfident?
So not everyone's going to like you. And that's okay. Some of the best mentors, coaches, even the executives that I used to work for, I didn't really like, I didn't really care for. You know, some of them I'm like, I actually don't like them right now. And that's okay, because what I say, it is, you are you're a trusted source of transformation, right? So even if you're overly confident, people aren't going to like that. You know why? Because you're shining a mirror sometimes on people where they haven't let their own selves shine.
Sure.
So sometimes they're just not going to like it, because it's like, why are they shining? And right? And it's really shining a light on the things that either they haven't done or they haven't embodied, and that's okay, right? So you aren't going to be liked. I had one of my clients is like, well, what if they judge me, and what if they don't like me? And I'm like, they already are. They already you're already being judged, and they already don't like you. So it's like, if you just set that expectation that you're not going to, because for all the people that, you know, don't care for you, there's going to be the same amount of people that are like raving fans, right? So it's not really it's not a popularity contest, especially when you're growing a business. It's yes, it's for your clients and customers to be of service, but you also want to be profitable. And sometimes people go to this like, oh, I want to be popular and well known, and like they're not making any profit, right? So I would just expect that people aren't going to like you, and then there's going to be people that do like you. So yeah, I don't think there's so much of being, it's being confident, but also being like humble at the same time. It's a dance, but
Sure.
you're going to be the only one that knows that dance for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Well, Kelly, this has been such an incredible conversation. If you had just one piece of wisdom from either from this conversation or just something that you carry with you as a business leader to share, what would that be?
Remember who you are. Just like tune in, embrace it, embody it, and that's going to be the unique like confidence activator and differentiator.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time to engage with this community on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone here today. We are just so thankful that you joined us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And to our audience, we would love for you to join us again for upcoming webinars, which you can use using that link that's going to be posted in the chat. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.